Hello there, you're welcome to the DubZone GAA podcast as we look ahead to this weekend's Dublin Senior Hurling semi-finals at Parnell Park. First of all, we're going to say hello to the Evening Herald's Conor McKeon. Hi Conor.
Hi Derek.
And we're also joined by Dublin hurlers and All-Star nominees, Chris Crummey and Eoghan O'Donnell. Hey guys.
Hey Derek.
Congrats to you both on the All-Star nominations, well deserved.
Thanks Derek, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I believe as well, congratulations are in order for you both because you both, I've been told by a mole here in Dublin GAA, you both graduated from your masters in the past few weeks. Is that right?
Yeah, that's
we
right.
Have,
the student
and
life
both in
no
the same
more,
course.
and have to go into the real world.
And both in the same course as well. What was the course?
Similar courses, yeah. I did the business management course, and Owen did the strategy course. So yeah, it was a long year, so it felt like it was never ending. But we're just delighted to be finished now at this stage.
Well, congratulations, guys. Well done, D. Okay, we're going to start actually obviously looking ahead to the semi-finals taking place this weekend. The two of them are on Sunday in Parnell Park. Craobh Chiarain versus St Brigids at 2:30, and then Vincents versus Cuala at 4:30 at Parnell Park as well. Conor, I guess we'll start with yourself. Looking ahead to those games, can you give us your overall assessment of the championship so far? Are you surprised by the last 4 teams in it? Were you surprised by some of the quarter-final results? Hello, Conor?
I'll jump in there, Derek. Yeah, I suppose the 4 teams left is a mixed bag. You would have said at the start of the year that Cuala and Vincents were very strong, and they'd be in it there around the end of the year, and they have. The other semi-final between Brigids and Craobh is probably one of the more unusual, that they've been 2 up-and-coming teams, and they consider themselves, quite the strong hurling teams. But for the rest of Dublin, there's a bit of shock that they're there. But they're well deserved to get their place there. They have a lot of talent, and there's a good mix in both teams between old and young. So both of them will fancy their chances, and they'll be going for a chance to get into a county final. Yeah,
Chris, I guess you obviously would know Craobh from close up. They obviously beat you in the quarterfinal, beat Lucan in the quarterfinal. As Owen said, there's something of a surprise pairing in that too, I guess. Were you impressed by Craobh in that quarterfinal?
Yeah, I suppose you'd have to be impressed by them. They've been very, very consistent, very strong all year. They had a very good league campaign, and then in the earlier rounds, in the group stages, they had a brilliant win against Vincents. So we knew obviously it was going to be a very tough game, but I suppose the intensity that Craobh brought to that game was something that probably caught me by surprise in a way. That they were a very strong, very physical team. I think a lot of people are aware of how to use the ball. They use it very well. They played Alan McCrabb as a sweeper that day, and the rest of the defence really looked for him with the ball. And then they have a lot of threats with the young lads, with Billy Ryan and Keane Derwin, and then Francis Usanga was a handful against us as well. So it's not really a surprise that they're there, considering they have been in the top 4 in the league, and they were so strong in the earlier rounds. They have a lot of threat in their team, and they bring great physicality. So I think we're in for a very good game against Brigids this Sunday.
Yeah, from your point of view, were you disappointed? Were you, obviously you're disappointed to be knocked out, but did you feel you left the game behind at all, or was it something that Craobh, fully deserved to go through?
Yeah, on the day, I think Craobh did fully deserve to go through, but I suppose we were very disappointed with our start. We were 2 goals down after 2 minutes, and that was really a killer blow for us, because we knew how important getting off to a good start would be, and in the end it was probably we lost the game by 4 points, so that was probably ultimately the difference on the day. And then I suppose we had 15 wides looking back on it, and I suppose you're not going to win many games with that tally. So I suppose looking at the Bridges team this Sunday, their forwards have been on fire. They have a great free taker in Paul Winters, and I think if they take those chances, that they'll have a great chance.
Yeah, and Owen, you were on CoCom the day the Crummey quarter final, but you also caught a bit of the Brigids Novena game as well. So you would have seen Brigids against Novena that day. What did you make of them, and do you fancy them to, maybe go into the final and maybe challenge who people see maybe as the favourites, Cuala and Vincents? Do you see them potentially as going all the way?
Yeah, it's hard to know who will come out on top of the Brigids Craobh game. They both be kind of very close linked. I suppose it's an obvious one, but whoever's forwards comes out on top on the day will win, and it's an easy thing to say, but like when you look at Owen Dunn, Cian O'Sullivan, Paul Winters, Johnny McGurk, there's a lot of talent there. So if I was the Craobh Chiarain team, I would try to look at how to limit them as much as possible. And then on the Craobh side, you've lads like Billy Ryan and Paul Kelly and Keane Derwin who also have a lot of talent. So it's just whoever of them rises to the occasion on the day really will go through, because I don't think there's much between them in terms of talent or potential. So it's a difficult one to call. And then obviously they have a lot of momentum after getting 2 wins like that, going into the final. They'll fancy themselves against any team in the final. Anything can happen.
Yeah, I was talking to I think it was Johnny McGurk after his quarter final, and he was kind of boasting about the fact that there's 3 Northside teams and only 1 Southside team this year. There was a kind of surprise in that regard. I mean, obviously one of Cuala and Crokes were going to go, but the fact that Bowden were knocked out as well, it is kind of a surprising matchup in the semi-finals.
Yeah, it's surprising in that sense, yeah, I'd say so. But like Chris said it as well, that Craobh have been in the top tier in the last league and championship for the last couple of years, so it's no surprise that they're thereabouts. At the start of the year, you would have said Brigids, Bowden, Ballybowden, Crokes, all them teams would be up at the top. So it's just how the draw worked out on either side, that Cuala and Crokes played earlier on, whereas it was Crokes and Bowden in the final last year. So it's hard to know what way it'll turn out each year.
Yeah, and I guess that Vincents game then, you again were on co-comms for that Cuala game the last day. The big story that day, I guess for both the big story that day was the former of Conor. He scored 2-3 that day. Conor Callahan coming back from obviously winning the All-Ireland with the footballers the week before, both goals coming in the opening 7 minutes. There were people who questioned him before the game whether he'd struggled to return to hurling so quickly after the football final, considering he hadn't played much, but those worries proved fairly unfounded. Have either you played against him from a hurling point of view over the last while, and what's he like to play against?
Yeah, we played Cuala in the quarter final last year, and I suppose he brings a lot of those similar strengths that he has in football into the hurling. He's very athletic, and the pure strength and pace of him is very difficult to stop when he gets a run at you. I suppose the sign of this Cuala team over the last few years is the strength throughout the pitch, and I know Con was exceptional the last day and scored 2-3, but Vincents will obviously be trying to keep him tabs on him the next day. But if they do that, there's other threats throughout the pitch, such as Mark Schutte. It's great to see him back beside him, and Colm Cronin. There's so many, and the 2 Tracies. There's players that can pop up on any given day, and I suppose that's the challenge that awaits Vincents on Sunday.
Conor's back in. But one of the questions I asked you at the start was, were you surprised, I guess, by the semi-final pairings and how the championship has gone so far? And are you?
Yeah, to a certain extent. Like, I have to say, I saw Novena beat Crokes that night before the big long summer break, and I thought that night they looked really, really good. I thought the 2 Curries were exceptional. And I thought Donald Burke played very well that night. And I thought Novena were going to have a big say in this. Now, I didn't see the Brigids Novena game, but I think Cian O'Sullivan got 5 points to play that night, and he's the sort of guy, he's the sort of forward that you'd love to see, maybe taking that form in with the Dublin squad next year, because he's got a kind of a touch of the Dottie O'Callaghan's about him. But as the 2 lads have said, Brigids have a serious sort of attack, and they're worth a place in the semi-final. Yeah, I think it's, in another way, it's good to see Vincent Craobh, 2 sort of traditional sort of hurling superpowers, back at this level as well, because I think 5-6 years ago they were a long way off it when it looked like Ballybowden and Crokes and Cuala were going to really take over. So, look, I think they're the elephant in the room is that Cuala are playing some serious hurling. I think they're kind of refreshed under new management. I don't think they're quite as systematic as they were in the past. They haven't really brought through any sort of newer players. Diarmuid O'Flynn is probably the only one that's broken into the team from the double All-Ireland winning team. But with Con back, and as the 2 lads were saying, he's such an outlet. You can just, if you can get him the ball in space, you can see that he's actually starting to kind of freak defenders out to a certain extent, because they know if they try and engage with him, he can go past them or he can go through them if there's a goal on. So defenders are starting to actually stand off Conor Callahan now at this stage. Cuala have so much talent all over the pitch that if you're trying to drop back a sweeper or you're trying to double team one fella, Mark Schutte will do the damage, or Colm Cronin will come here through the middle. So I think at this stage, not to be in any way disrespectful to Brigids or Craobh or Vincents, but Cuala are just like they're back into that All Ireland winning form. You know, Mark Schutte, who looked like he was going to have a good summer with Dublin before he got injured, he's back playing. Keane O'Callaghan was in the team the other day as well. So like it's a really, really strong 15. And like at this stage, I think they're kind of overwhelming favourites.
Yeah, and is that deserved, guys? I mean, do you see someone stopping them from the other three teams? Obviously, Vincents is this weekend, but Craobh or Brigids, can any of those three teams stop them?
Yeah, I think Vincents, like, they had such a good win against Ballybowen the last day. I think that will give them great confidence, and momentum's, I suppose, a big thing in sport, and they definitely have that coming into this game. So for me, I think the biggest thing they have to make sure happens is the quality of ball going into Conor and Mark and these lads, that they try and limit that as much as possible. And last year, I suppose we probably went with the strategy of playing a sweeper, and it didn't work because it probably gave the likes of Sean Moore and Paul Schutte, the lads out the pitch, time and space on the ball to pick out passes for Conor and Mark. So I think there's big onus and pressure on the likes of John Heatherton and Conor Burke and these lads around the middle, just to stop those lads in the Cuala half back line, which has been such a strong presence over the last few years. If they can stop the quality of ball going in there, I think that'll give them a big boost and be a long way in stopping Cuala.
Conor, you mentioned there that Willie Maher's brought in a kind of different style. Tell us about the different style that he's brought in compared to what Matty Kenny would have had at Cuala before that.
Yeah, like it's probably less pronounced now that Conor's back, because he's all of a sudden the outlet again. But you know, even during the league, like they played out a really good league final against Ballyboden at Cuala Park that day. And like you always got the sense with Cuala previously that like they were that the system that Matty Kenny had really suited the team and really suited their strengths. But I don't know, it looks a little bit less structured. You know, but you see Sean Moran gets on a huge amount of ball. Like he made a great run the last day for Conor O'Callaghan's second goal, so he's actually freed up a little bit to actually attack, trying to use his pace. And like Sean Tracy and Darragh O'Connell, like they've so much talent now at this stage, but you know, they probably don't need to be as rigid maybe as they were in the past. And like 3-18 against a team like Craobh is a huge score to run up. But like, you know, they have all the experience now, and again, like I don't want to look too far down the tracks, but I was even just checking the draw for the Leinster Championship this morning, and they would be on the far side of the draw from Ballyhale Shamrock, where Ballyhale to win Kilkenny and Dublin were to win, or Cuala were to win the Dublin Senior Hurling Championship. And like the level of talent that's in that Cuala team now, and the experience that they have of winning, and the level of ambition that they have there, you wouldn't be surprised if they were still kind of hurling at the end of November, early December.
Oh, we talked a lot about Con, obviously, because he was exceptional and scored 2-2 that day. But Heatherton, 2-3, I think he scored that day. But John Heatherton scored 19 points against Ballyboden in their win the last day. Again, a bit of a surprise. A lot of people would have expected Bowden to go through. But Heatherton scored 19 points. They won by 11 in the end. I mean, I know that they had to grab a late point to level the game to go bring it into extra time. But to win by 11 points in the end is pretty emphatic. How big a win is that for Vincents, just in terms of confidence even to go into a semi-final against Cuala, knowing that they've already beaten Ballyboden?
Yeah, it is massive. To beat the county champions by that score in extra time shows that they have massive fitness in their team. They have David O'Herity in as a selector/coach, and he's one of the top-rated coaches in the country, so he's obviously doing a lot of work behind the scenes. Like Chris alluded to earlier, some of the class that Vincents have in their forwards is their top class forwards with Hedjo, Conor Burke, Keane McBride. And the thing about them is they're all big forwards, well able to win their ball. Like I said, Hedjo got 19 points there the last day. Like that in itself is an outrageous achievement. But he's someone that's worked massively on his fitness and his athleticism over the last year, and it's really coming to benefit now. And Vincents will be looking for them to be their outlet man on puck outs and long balls. So Cuala will try to get the matchups right. Like John Shane in full back is a big man and was the sweeper/man marker for them last year, for Cuala last year, and in all-round successes. So it'll be interesting to see if he comes out and marks Hedjo for that physicality, and that would free up Sean Moore, like Conor said, to get down them balls and run in. So it's just the big thing for me about Cuala is how they always stamp their style of play in the game, that they've two wing forwards in Jake Malone and Sean Tracy that naturally want to come deep and look for ball. And the problem with that is if Vincent's half-back line follow them, it leaves a lot of space in front of a very dangerous full forward line. If they don't follow them, then you've Jake Malone and Sean Tracy, who are top-class players, picking off balls and scoring from long range. So Vincent's are going to have an awful headache trying to stamp their authority on the game and not fall into the trap that Cuala wants you to fall into. So that's the big question for me, is whether Vincent's can impose their own style of play on the game rather than falling into what Cuala have planned.
And I suppose on that as well, like the last day against Crokes, they probably had a very dangerous inside line of Oisin O'Rourke, Ronan Hayes. But from watching the game, I can't remember too many balls that were really played out in front of the likes of Oisin and Ronan to play to their advantages. So I think Vincent's the last day, they've Alan Moore, who's probably one of the quickest lads in Dublin, with Keane McBride inside. So I think they're going for Vincent's to win this game, I think they're going to need goals. And I think if they can start getting good quality ball in front of those two, I think that could cause the Cuala defence some serious headaches.
And not to get too far ahead, I guess, but I mean, are you kind of looking at the winner coming from Cuala Vincents? Not to dismiss Brigids, Craobh, but is that where the winner is going to come from?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think Craobh Brigids, they've had a very strong year, strong league campaign today as well, and I think if either of them get to the county final, like they're going in with huge belief and confidence and momentum, that I think that on any given day, like they'll fancy their chances of beating Cuala or Vincents. Cuala are obviously favourites and justifiably so over their current form and what they've achieved over the last few years. But no, I definitely think that if Brigids or Craobh, whoever gets to the final, they'll still be in there with a chance when they get there.
And I think part of Craobh Chiarain's strength is their goalkeeper, Stephen Chester, that he has a massive puck out that causes all sorts of damage. If that ball is travelling 100 yards and it's landing on top of a full forward, full back line, it's very difficult for anyone to deal with, no matter the quality of the full back line. And once it breaks, it can be anyone's. And Craobh Chiarain got a goal and a few more scores from that the last day. So I'd say they'll be trying to do that again against Brigids. And Darragh Plunkett played full back the last day for Brigids, which was more of an unusual choice because he has so much pace and hurling him. So it'll be interesting to see whether they try target him under high ball with players like Kieran McGowan in there, who's a big, strong lad. So it'll be interesting to see if Craobh Chiarain try to go for the same choice.
Okay, lads, predictions, I guess. We've talked through them now at this stage. You're kind of saying the Cuala are the favourites. Do you fancy them to go through? We'll go, Conor, first of all, your predictions of the two games?
Yeah, I do fancy Cuala to go through. I have to say, I agree with the lads that the Vincents victory over Ballyboden was huge for them as a team, because I think it was 4 points they lost to Bowden last year in the county semi-final, and they were kind of right in that till the very end. And again, I think they could probably cause Cuala problems if they go direct to, John Heatherton or Clare, the Clare puck out. But having said that, look, I really do think Cuala are kind of coming back to the form of 2 years ago. So far they've shown all those signs, particularly with Tom back and full forward. And then the other game, I think it's going to be really, really tight, but I actually think Brigids are going to win it. Again, like if somebody like Keane O'Sullivan gets on an awful lot of ball, and if Paul Winters, who's actually a very good ball winner as well, has been a really, really good accurate free taker. And if they talk about long puck outs, like Alan Owen probably has the longest with them all. So yeah, I think the two games will be pretty tight, but I think it will be, I think it will be Cuala and Brigids.
Yeah, I probably have to agree with Conor there. I think the first day, I just think Brigids have more threats up front. I think the form that Keane O'Sullivan, Owen Dunn and Paul Winters have shown in the last two games has been excellent, and I think the greater threat up front will see them through in that game. And then in the second game, I just think Cuala, as I've said already, I just think the different threats throughout the team, like if you keep Con quiet, I just feel like Colin Cronin, Mark Shute, David Tracy, someone else will stand up, and the form that they've shown the last few games, they're putting up some serious scores. And I just think that Vincent's defence will probably struggle with how good a form they're in. So I'd probably go for Brigids and Cuala as well, yeah.
And Owen, Cuala Brigids is on that wagon as well?
I think I'll disagree on the Craobh Brigids game. I think if Craobh can bring the intensity they've been bringing all year, they can make a real dogfight out of it that Brigids probably wouldn't be able to live with the physicality of the Craobh Chiarain forwards and the likes of Kev Hedgehoe centre back. So it's just all about if Craobh Chiarain can turn it into as big of a a tackling rough game as they can, and that's the kind of atmosphere they thrive on. So it's just whether they can turn it into enough of a dogfight. But I'd have to go Craobh, and then I'd agree with the lads that Cuala just have too much talent, that there's too many fires to put out, and it's quite difficult for Vincents to stop all of them. That if they stop a few, then others will rise to the occasion. So I'd have to go for Cuala in that one as well.
All right, lads. Thanks for joining us, and we'll chat to you all again soon. Thanks a million.
Thanks, Derek.
And don't forget as well that the semi-finals will both be live on Dubs TV this Sunday afternoon. It's Craobh Chiarain versus St Brigids, throw in at 2:30 at Parnell Park. And at 4:30, it's St Vincents versus Cuala. Okay, coming up next, we'll be focusing on the football. Conor is staying with us, and we'll be joined as well by former Dublin man Ger Brennan. Okay, it's football time now on the DubZone podcast. Conor McKeon from the Herald has stayed on the line, and we're joined now by former Dublin and St Vincents man Ger Brennan.
Derek, how are you?
Now, as I say, former St Vincents man Ger and former Dublin man. You have retired from the club scene with Vincents. How is retirement going for you so far?
I suppose I have a bit more time on my hand. Derek helping out at home a bit more and enjoying life over in UCD GAA Club as well, not being pulled and dragged either sides of the city. Of course, you do miss it when this part of the championship season begins after Dublin are finished with the inter-county setup. But I had a good 16 years playing senior football with the club and very content with how it went.
Was it difficult to make the decision, though, Ger, in terms of leaving the club scene? Obviously, you left the inter-county scene a few years back, but leaving the club scene, there's a kind of bit of finality about it in terms of the end of your playing career. Was it difficult to make that decision, or did it kind of come naturally to you?
It was probably something that evolved, Derek, over the last 2 or 3 seasons. With each year that was passing, I was probably finding it more challenging to get myself motivated for the season ahead. The nature of the job in UCD involves a lot of evenings around peak times for the St Vincents club scene too, so that would obviously influence the energy levels and what have you. But I was fairly content with the decision I made, and again, when I tend to make a call, I tend to kind of be happy and content with it and stick with it.
Good stuff. Conor, we did the same for the hurling the last time. Your assessment of the season as a whole, I guess, of the Dublin Senior Football Championship season. Obviously, the round 3 games were last weekend, and the quarter-final pairings have now been confirmed. What do you make of the last 8 teams? Are you surprised by any of them?
Yeah, there was always going to be 4 or 5 teams that you thought were inevitability, or were going to be inevitable quarter-final participants. They're all there as well. There's obviously 1 or 2, like Thomas Davis. It's a fair out of story considering they were the club who objected to the senior football championship being split into 2 tiers, and after losing their objection, they went and won the 2nd tier, and then their first year back in the 1st tier. Now they're in the quarterfinals. So, it's a fair one for them. Obviously, you would have expected talent-wise for Ballymun to be in the quarterfinals, but they have struggled these past few years with that initial round after the All Ireland Senior Football Championship is finished, and you could see. For a lot of I think there's 5 Dublin players that started the last day, and Eoghan come up on the bench, and they lost to Novena. And you could just probably detect it for all the effort that those players were putting in, that the energy levels probably weren't where they could be, or where they might have been. And the other thing as well is, you look at the teams who really thrive in this competition, and over the last few years, and I include Ger Vincent's team in that as well. They've tended to be the teams that only have had to slot 1 or 2 players in, that have gone with a consistent team during the league and have kind of gelled and got a bit of cohesion together as a group all through the summer. And it's very difficult to change it for your team with effectively no preparation for it. And I thought they were very stale that night against Novena the last day. Sean Curry made 2 or 3 really good saves. Novena could be out of sight. And Dean Rock, who put on such an amazing clinic of place kicking in the Drawn All Ireland final. His shooting wasn't anywhere near what it was. So I suppose it goes to show you what a sort of a fit edge these players fall off when the season's over, particularly after going to a replay. So it can be very, very tough. And I think for a club like Ballymun, with so many players involved in that Dublin team, they've paid the price over the years. They paid the price against Novena, and they're the club that are probably the most. It's not a shock to Novena are there, and I know that, obviously that was a difficult group, and only 2 clubs come out of it, but, if you take the number of All Ireland medals that are in that Ballymun, it's obviously a shock to say that they're not in the last 8 of their county.
Yeah, Ger, I guess Ballymun have struggled obviously over the last number of years. They won the Dublin County Championship in 2012, but apart from that, they haven't won it in such a long time. Is that so? In your opinion, Ger, is that solely down to the fact that they have maybe so many players in the Dublin setup, and that they're coming back in, like Conor mentioned, they're coming back into the county setup with the last round of games, or even heading into the quarterfinals and latter stages of the championship, and they've had players who are playing at such a high level over the whole summer that they struggle to maybe integrate back into the panel so quickly?
No, it's certainly a large part of it. It's a major part of it, really, Derek. And I think Conor hit the nail on the head when you've got 5-6 inter-county guys coming back into a squad. The dynamic within the starting 15 quite often changes. When you're introducing those 5 or 6 players, I know Evan Comerford started on the bench last day. But with those 5 players coming in on the field, they're disrupting maybe up to 8 or 9 positional changes in total out of the starting outfield 14. So it is a big challenge. Going back to 2012, where Ballymun won the Dublin Championship and lost narrowly to St Brigids to Roscommon in the final. They actually bet us in the quarter-final stages in Parnell Park, and at that time we probably had about 5 or 6 fellas on the Dublin panel, and the real learning after that defeat for us, Derek, was Tommy Conroy, our manager, with Sean Brady, would have sat down one-on-ones with myself, Dermot Connolly and Mossy Quinn and a couple of other guys involved in the panel, and they kind of put the gun to our heads in many ways and says, look, it's great for the club to have so many fellas playing for the senior county team, but you have to remember where you started from, and if you guys are not turning up for months on end, it's extremely difficult to have any chance of being successful come the latter stages of the Dublin Championship. So there was a bit of a strategy or a plan put in place where we would have a free weekend from Dublin. That weekend was given to the club, and there was no kind of feeling sorry for yourself that, look, we need to take a break here, we're training hard with Dublin. It was a case of getting up to the club, getting into the dressing room with the fellas. If you weren't, even if it was a free evening, so to speak, and the club were training or there was a club game, you'd be getting up in the dressing room beforehand, getting involved in the tactics and being positive around the fellas and pushing guys on. So when we did come back into the setup after Dublin were finished with the county team, that it was more seamless than what it had been before. But it is very, very difficult when you're serving several masters. And again, Conor mentioned it, like the senior final went to a senior All-Ireland, went to a replay, and to get yourself up for that again is a huge task. And we obviously seen how well the lads did in that replayed game, and then to go and play a senior club championship 2 weeks later, it's extremely difficult. But it's probably been the sword that Ballymun have fell on over the last number of seasons, where they have underperformed and they haven't gotten the best out of themselves. And I know a lot of Ballymun people around, and knowing the fellas themselves involved with Dublin, they will be disappointed with how they have kind of performed for the club over the last number of years. But it's hard to fix, but it can be done. But it takes a lot of work and commitment.
Yeah, and obviously you mentioned there the conversation that you would have had with the manager back in 2012 after the 2012 exit. It obviously worked pretty well, because you went on the year after, having won the All-Ireland with Dublin 2013. You came out of that with Dublin, straight into club championship with Vincents, won Dublin, won Leinster, and obviously ended up winning the All-Ireland. So whatever conversation you had at the end of 2012 worked in 2013. So what was the turnaround between, say, 2011, winning the All-Ireland with Dublin, and then 2013 doing the same thing with Dublin, going the full way with Dublin, but obviously being able to come back into the club scene and go all the way with the club?
Well, it comes down to making a choice. You either choose there to commit to the club properly, fully, along with your Dublin inter-county commitments, or you choose to go through the motions and be kind of half there, when really all you want to do is be off doing your own thing and minding yourself. So I know we all of us involved with Dublin, we made individual choices, and we said that the club is extremely important to us, and that we have a duty and responsibility to give all of ourselves to getting the best from the club, and particularly the fellas who aren't on the inter-county team, to be respectful to them and the effort that they've put in for the times that we were away with Dublin. We're also working hard as well, naturally enough, getting ourselves right for senior inter-county football, but not to be dismissive of the efforts that the other guys are putting in. They were doing the early morning sessions themselves in St Vincents Clubhouse. They were doing the fitness stuff. They were doing the analysis work. And when we were coming back for club games or when the season was over, there was such a kind of a high standard of commitment to performance amongst St Vincents players that when we reintegrated back into the team, that it didn't take too many games for us to kind of get back up to speed. But really, it comes down to an individual choice. Are you committed or aren't you? And it's very tough as a senior intercounty footballer to get your head around that. But it's something that I think we did quite successfully. We got to 5 county finals in a row, winning 4 of them, losing out to Bowden in the third one. They obviously went on a super run themselves, won the Club All Ireland. So it was a great innings with Tommy and then with Brian Mullins as well after that.
Just to review, I guess, of the quarter-final pairings, because we've been chatting about it here. So Jude's Vincents is the first game. That'll be on Saturday, the 12th of October at 5:15 Parnell Park. After that, it's Ballybowden Novena. Crokes Clontarf on Sunday at 2. That's the Sunday 13th of October. And Castleknock Thomas Davis is the last of the quarter-finals, Sunday 13th of October at 4 o'clock. All those games at Parnell Park. Conor, are we doing a slight disservice to Novena by talking about Ballymun's struggles? Friday's win. Obviously, Novena had a couple of players who were involved, a few players who were involved in the Dublin panel as well. Johnny Cooper and Merchant in particular, but Conor McHugh as well was there. So are we doing a slight disservice to Novena by talking about Ballymun's struggles? Did they deserve to win on Friday? Did they do enough to win, and did they impress you as well on Friday?
Yeah, look, Novena are a good team. I think when Desmond Farrell took over the team, they became an even more interesting prospect. I think James Doran is a fellow with a lot of potential, and obviously they've got Conor McHugh and Aaron Bourne and John Cassidy. So there's a lot of pace. What they probably lack is a couple of big ball winners around the middle of the pitch. They tend to go short and kick out and walk the ball up the pitch. And even against the last day against Ballymun, they got turned over an awful lot in the tackle, 5 or 6 times when they were in good positions, and obviously those get goal chances that they didn't quite take. So there's a lot of potential with Novena, but they are quite young and they are quite small as well. I think the 2 big quarterfinals would be the Novena Ballybowden game and the St Jude's St Vincents game. You'd expect that Castleknock are going to be Thomas Davis, that Crokes are going to be St Park. And I think the Novena Ballybowden game is the really, really interesting one, because I think Ballybowden are a lot of people's bets, I think, to win this Dublin championship. We talk about the county players that they don't have during the summer. You can obviously slot Michael Darragh McCauley back in and Robbie McDade. I know Collie Basquel was away in America during the summer, but for the last couple of years, I think Collie Basquel and Ryan Basquel have been probably 2 of the top 4 or 5 forwards in the Dublin Senior Football Championship. When they won that All Ireland under Andy McEntee, they was quite a young team, and they still have the guts of that team left. They go very well in the league, and they're very big and very well organised. So, you're saying to do the service to Novena, they had to go and beat Ballybowden the last day, but it wasn't a perfect performance from Novena by any stretch of the imagination, and you still got the impression that Ballymun were probably there for the taking. So, that game is a really interesting one, and the other one is Vincents and Jude's. I sort of thought that Jude's were going to win the championship last year after they beat Ballybowden and then beat Vincents by 9 points in the semi-final. It was a complete dismantling that day. Jude's are a team with a lot of big men, and they're as well organised defensively in how they structure their defence as any club team in the country. Now obviously they were beaten in the final by Craobh, but I thought Jude's were actually going to go and win it last year. And just looking at the 2 teams now, I'm not sure that there's that much that has changed with either Jude's or Vincents since last year for warrant all of a sudden Vincents being favourites for that game. If you remember, Dermot Connolly had to drop really, really deep to get on the ball. Those long passes that he plays into Enda Varley and Motley Quinn, they just weren't on because Jude's got so many bodies back there. So it'll just be interesting to see whether that game sort of follows the same trend as last year's game, or if Vincents will have a different way of trying to open up Jude.
Cool. Ger, what you make of that?
Well, having played in that game last year against St Jude's, Derek, we were certainly well bet on the day. Jude's played the better football. They brought much higher intensity to how they played, how they tackled. and they were just hungrier, and that showed with I think it was maybe 9 points between the teams at the end of the 60 minutes. I think what Conor mentioned about Jude's, they've two things going for them, and one is that structure defensively that they have. They don't tend to vary or move away from it, so they are quite difficult to break down. And then the second thing would be physically, they're quite big, strong men. If you take the ball into contact in that middle third or in around the edge of their D, you're going to get swallowed up and you're going to get turned over. And they're very, very good at breaking at pace. They play a bit like Mickey Hart's Tyrone when they're playing maybe 13 guys behind the ball and trying to break out once they turn you over. So again, that was something we would have been aware of going into the game last year against St Jude's, but look at they were the better team on the day. I going into the next game next week or next Saturday, Derek. I know St Vincents lads, having talked to a few of the boys, they'd be very what would you call it, focused and excited and looking forward to the opportunities to try to put things right after the disappointing performance against St Jude's last year. Again, Jude's, I don't think they've varied what I've seen of them this year. They haven't really moved away from that kind of style of play, that defensive structure that they have, and breaking that pace with some lovely kick passing on occasion. And St Vincent's, look, we've been in 5 of the last 6 county finals. Winning 4, we're well versed at dealing with knockout games, and in terms of preparation, you know, the players will just have to put in the groundwork, look at the opposition, and make sure that they get themselves right too.
Some of the other games over the weekend as well, there were a couple of surprises. Clontarf beating Lucan, for example. Clontarf going through in Group 2 alongside Ballyboden St Enda's. Clontarf will now face Kilmacud Crokes in the quarter-finals. So what did you make of the Clontarf-Lucan game? And also, I guess Raheny slightly unlucky in Group 3 not to go through, but they beat Plunkett's on Saturday afternoon at Parnell Park. But it's Jude's and Thomas Davis who go through. Thomas Davis going through on scoring difference ahead of Raheny. So those two results, what did you make of those? Were you surprised by them?
Well, starting with Clontarf, Derek, I certainly wasn't surprised. You have to look at the 2015 Dublin Championship. They pushed Ballyboden St Enda's very, very close in that semi-final. Bowden obviously went on to win the championship that year, but they're very, very talented and up-and-coming team. The second thing, and more recently, to be aware of, is that Clontarf are in the promotion playoffs, so they're very close to get up into the Division 1 of the Dublin Senior Football League for the 2020 campaign. So they're an up-and-coming club. They have a lot of very fast, talented individual players, and obviously Jack is certainly their main man. Now, I watched him against Skerries on Dubs TV in the second group game, which they lost narrowly by a point or two. But they do have a lot to offer going forward, and I wouldn't be surprised now if they push Kilmacud Crokes close. I think Crokes will just pull away midway during the second half. They'll just probably have too much firepower, but Clontarf will go out without any expectations or on themselves, or without any pressure on themselves rather, and they'll just seek to kind of give a good account. Raheny have probably been, again, good results for them the weekend gone, but again not enough to get over the line. You know, they've been probably disappointing for me at senior level for the last couple of years, given the number of players that they have had in Dublin under 20, 21 football teams, and indeed on the senior panel. I think they should be pushing on that bit more now at this stage, and again, I'm not sure what the answers for Raheny are going into next year's championship campaign, but they're a team that really should be doing a lot better. Thomas Davis, I was at a couple of the county board meetings where the discussions were held around the new championship structure, and there was a lot of good and positive debate around how the 32 teams should be separated and the process that should be involved in that. But ultimately, Thomas Davis, they ended up in the Senior B. They did obviously protest or appeal it initially, and when that didn't work out for them, they put their heads down, they put a plan together, and they won the Senior B championship. And here they are in a quarter final. Thomas Davis would have won 3 championships in a row, going back maybe 20 years at this stage. So a lot of the mentors involved in the senior team would have been playing on that team, on those teams, and they still have high expectations of themselves as a club. So again, I think they'll push Castleknock extremely close. I think Castleknock, they've been knocking around now at senior level for a couple of years. Obviously got to the final against St Vincents maybe 3 or 4 seasons ago. They won the junior football championship maybe 8 years ago, won the intermediate championship 6 years ago, and now they're up in the senior championship the last couple of years, and they're an up-and-coming team. I watched Castleknock play St Vincents in the second round of the group stages in April gone, and what was impressive about them was, despite being behind by 5 or 6 points going into the last quarter of that game, they actually showed a lot of resilience to keep going and keep probing the St Vincent's defence. And look at it, they got 2 long balls drilled into the edge of the D, and they got goals out of it, and they ended up topping the group. But again, Castleknock would be the team I'd probably fancy going into that game.
Okay, good stuff, lads. Thanks a million for joining us today. A reminder of the quarter-final pairings. It's St Jude's versus St Vincents and Ballybowden Novena. Those games taking place Saturday 12th of October, 5:15 for Jude's Vincents and 7 o'clock for Bowden Novena. And then on Sunday 13th of October, it's Crokes against Clontarf and Castleknock versus Thomas Davis. We'll be taking a more in-depth look at those quarterfinals in next week's podcast. But for now, thanks a million for joining us, guys. Just a reminder before we go that both the hurling semi-finals will be live on Dubs TV this Sunday afternoon. That's Craobh Chiarain versus Brigids at 2:30 and St Vincents versus Cuala at 4:30. We'll also have highlights of Saturday's games during our live coverage on Sunday. That's the Senior B hurling final between Scully Cunnell and Thomas Davis, but that's on Parnell Park at 5 on Saturday. Before that, at 3 on Saturday, it's the Junior A hurling final between Finglas and St Jude's. We'll have highlights of both of those games on Sunday afternoon on Dubs TV, so tune in for that as well. But for now, thanks for listening, and chat to you soon.